of you present here have already read his impressive profile. Most part of it will also get revisited during the conversation, so I am avoiding repetition. Friends, as you are aware, we are in the midst of celebrating 125th anniversary of Bharat Chamber of Commerce. An important initiative that we have taken to mark this occasion is to bring rich learning opportunities for our members in diverse formats, especially for the emerging business leaders amongst us, for their future readiness. After all, they will be an integral part of Bharat Chamber's journey to our 150th, and today's session is also an endeavor in this direction. In his 44 years illustrious professional journey, Mr. Mehta has managed and built several businesses for global institutions and has been a go-to resource for complex crisis management. Therefore, to derive maximum learnings from Mr. Mehta's knowledge-rich experiences and his own learnings during this journey, the theme of today's conversation with him is Building Institutions, Managing Crisis. We all build businesses, but what does it take to make them strong, lasting institutions? What is the role of strong and ethical governance, of effective boards and board members, directors? What does it take to build corporate reputation and protect it? On the other side, crisis is also an integral part of business. We all face them off and on. How can we prevent them? Some crises are complex and grave. How to address crises which threaten the very existence of the business and organization that we have built with our hard work and passion? What is the mindset, attitude, behavior, structure, method, and process required to handle crisis? Ladies and gentlemen, to give us a clarity on many of such issues in a free-flowing conversation, please welcome accomplished institutional builder and sought-after crisis manager, Mr. Sunil Mehta, founder, chairman, and managing director of SPML Capital Advisors, in conversation with Bharat Chamber. A very warm welcome to you, Sunilji, to Bharat Chamber and to Kolkata. Thank you so much for accepting my invite and making the effort of coming to Kolkata and share your experiences and learnings with Bharat Chamber. Would you like to start with some opening remarks?
Thank you. Thank you, Nareshji, and thank you all the past presidents of this wonderful institution who have come this afternoon, and also all the other members of Bharat Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being here. It's a real privilege to be here today at the invitation of Nareshji, a dear friend of many, many decades, I would say, to come to an institution which has 125 years history and perhaps one of the first chambers of commerce in the country prior to India's independence. And what a wonderful thought that when we were not independent, we used the word Bharat Chamber of Commerce. So compliments to all the forefathers who have sort of been the ones responsible for coining that. So it's a privilege to be here with all of you today. And it is also, I would say, a great honor for me to come back to Kolkata. I first came to Kolkata as a young management associate in 1983 when I was joined Citibank, and I had never been to Kolkata earlier. So when we had a debriefing session after my training, and I was handed over a ticket to leave on a Saturday morning to leave for Kolkata as my next assignment, as my first official assignment on the same evening on Saturday, I kind of was in despair. I said, I may have not done something good in my training, that I have been sort of sent for this punishment posting to Kolkata. But when I landed here at 10:30 and I reached the Chamari where I was where I was staying, when the door opened, there were about 20 to 22 youngsters playing cricket in that chamari. And I said, wow, this is where Kolkata resides. And ever since then, that evening I remember so distinctly. And my predecessor who was handing over charge to me, was Piyush Gupta, who was, as you know, the former CEO of DBS Bank in Singapore. And I was given a legacy of good friends, a great city, a wonderful institution like Citibank to work for in Kolkata. And my memories of that 43 years ago are indelible. And when I come back from those 1983 to what it is today, Kolkata has changed. There are some parts of Kolkata which are the same. I just went to ITC headquarters to meet the chairman there, found that beautiful heritage building. So it's a combination of the old and also the new. And that's where this entrepreneurial spirit is there. In 2004, 2005, I was the chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce. And I came here with a delegation of American CEOs, company CEOs. And one of them who were part of the delegation is sitting here. So what I'm saying, Mr. Gulshan Sachdev, why don't you raise your hand, Mr. Sachdev? So what I'm going to say is, I've got an eyewitness here, so I'm not trying to say it for any kind of effect. We started at that time to visit one chief minister of one state every month. And so the first one that we decided that we will come to Kolkata as the American Chamber of Commerce. And that time the chief minister was Mr. Buddhadev Bhattacharya. And the secretariat of the chamber felt that we will be ambushed and we are not going in the right direction, and that's a wrong decision. And he didn't even come, the secretariat, the CEO or whatever, the executive director didn't come for that. But about 15, 16 of us came and we went to Writers' Building. And the chief minister and his team was there, the industries minister, I forget his name, a very, very dynamic minister. But the chief minister made the presentation himself about West Bengal. We thought it would be a 1-hour meeting. It lasted, I think, 2.5 hours. But one of the most telling things that came out of that, the learning, regardless of which dispensation has been in power in this wonderful state, I think the desire of all of them has been to sort of make some change in this. And the potential was obviously recognized, because that was the time when we started this whole thing about look east. So, and Kolkata was that point where we need to kind of build relations with all the countries on the east of India. And so the potential what I was alluding to, the potential has been enormous, recognized, but now it's a question of execution, implementation. And I think just listening to whatever Nareshji, and having met many of you, the kind of businesses that you run, the potential is enormous. Many of you have done the hard work. Your next generation in some of the business families are now coming into play. They will be the ones who are going to carry the baton forward. And I think there's so much that can be done in this wonderful state. You have a new dispensation, and I'm sure that they're going to be very, very keen to make it happen. And I wish there are some members of the new political dispensation sitting in this room. So there is a lot of hope, a lot of expectation, but none of this can be done without the involvement of everybody, all concerned, to make it work. And I think that's the only way that we can have collective success. But I still say my heart in this part of this country, and I think we have tremendous miles to go before we can see that we have achieved the potential that this state has. So I'll stop here and I'll go straight into the question answers.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. Your timing of that visit to Writers' Building was like an island in that time period of last 50 years when somebody was looking seriously at industrialization, actually. So that was fantastic. But yes, we all are very, very excited, and now looks like Bengal ka samay wapas aaya.
Bilkul. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was fantastic. Wonderful memories of that. Yeah.
Super, sir. So let's start this conversation, Sunilji. In early 2000, the then CEO of global financial conglomerate AIG, American Insurance Group, Hank Greenberg, handed over to you the responsibility as country head and CEO of AIG India, AIG's first employee in India, with a mandate to build an array of insurance and other businesses. All that you had was a two-pager MOU signed between Mr. Ratan Tata and Mr. Greenberg in 1995 for insurance businesses. Negotiating the term sheet and JV agreement between these two behemoths to put together the life insurance and general insurance businesses must have been quite a task. Would you like to briefly share your experience and learnings from that process?
Thank you. What a wonderful way to start. Uh, you know, I can say this, that being given the responsibility of starting AIG businesses in India was like a private equity mandate that I had, is to, if there was potential in the Indian market and the Indian regulations permitted, all of AIG's businesses would put a flag, plant a flag in this country. And that is what happened. Basically, Hank Greenberg, who was our chairman and CEO at that time, was a real adventure guy. I mean, AIG actually started, this American International Group, started in Shanghai. So it was a Chinese roots, moved to United States, and I think in the mid-30s it started. Then during the whole World War II, it sort of moved its anchors to United States, and then from there on. And between 1936 when it started and 2000 when I joined AIG, there were only two chairmen and CEOs. So this was the second one. It was started by a gentleman called C.V. Starr. So this gentleman, Mr. Greenberg, was the one who really sort of made AIG international. China was really a strong position, but India was where he wanted to come in a big way, particularly when there were signs of the insurance market being opened up. So in 1995, anticipating the change, which was passed in 1999, the Insurance Act, he sent his people, got Mr. Ratan Tata to feel interested about partnering with AIG, and then signed the two-page MOU. And it was just a simple piece of paper. It just so happened that by coincidence in 1995, when that MOU was being signed, I was still with Citibank, and I happened to be sitting in Vigyan Bhavan on the same podium where it was signed. In 1995, purely by accident, my boss who was to come and give a speech, the Citibank boss who was to come and speak, his wife fell ill, and that very previous night he said, "Sunil, you need to give the speech tomorrow morning at Vigyan Bhavan." And I said, "Ops." But anyway, and I witnessed that signing, and that memory sort of struck between two stalwarts, Ratan Tata and Hank Greenberg, signing that MOU. And 5 years later, I had the chance of being able to sort of then put it in operation. And I tell you, it was most exciting because when I joined them, I was in a room in Taj Mahal Hotel where we had a rep office. I went to that office and I thought somebody will tell me what to do. For a month, nothing would come. Then I said, listen, they're paying me my salary, so let me start drawing on the canvas. What did I say? Of course, there were two identified insurance companies that we had to do joint ventures with the Tatas. But what I did was scan the market. What else could AIG do in this Indian market? And that was the most important thing. When I went back to Greenberg and said, these are the 8 other businesses that you can do. So sequentially, we started entering the Indian market with those 8 businesses. But coming to the point of having the joint venture, the term sheet between Tatas and AIG, it was probably one of the most difficult tasks. And a very interesting thing, that while we were trying to kind of woo the Tatas into, AIG wanted at 26% ownership, because that was the FDI rules at that point of time, they wanted management control of the joint ventures and the right to appoint the MD and CEO. And here I was having Tatas on the other side. They said, how can you we own 74%, but we had to kind of come to a conclusion. So And to top it all, there was a private equity transaction between the Tatas and AIG, which went a bit haywire. And AIG decided to sue the Tatas and at the same time wanted to enter into a joint venture agreement. This was a contradiction. And I was told before I had resigned from Citibank and I was just about to join AIG. I said, this is ironical. How can you do this? But anyway, I think the learning from this is, howsoever difficult negotiations you get into, but if the intentions are right, you must find a middle path and respect each other. And even if it is tough for the person who's on the ground, to kind of show them that the Tatas do have a point of view and you need to accept. In fact, one night at 2 in the morning when we were negotiating, my AIG colleagues asked me from New York, who do you work for? Why are you batting for the Tatas? But you have to keep resilient. You have to say that I'm not going to take it personal, even though I wanted to, and I wanted to throw the Polycom out of the 12th floor office. But we stood and found a way out and found people on the other side and our side who could forge this alliance. And I think it is today a very, very happy partnership between the Tatas and AIG, even though I'm not there. Those two companies, Tata AIG General Insurance and Tata AI Life, are growing very well. They've done exceptionally well. And just to tell you as to how they are being perceived inside the Tatas, I did meet Mr. Chandrasekhar a couple of months back. And before I was leaving his room, he said one thing. He said, Sunil, you need to be proud of what you started. So this is really, you don't have to see that you're going to get returns at that point of time, but on building institutions, you have to look at it that you're doing there not for any personal returns, but the fact that this came from the chairman of Tata Sons, how many, 25 years later, 26 years later, I think that is the most satisfying thing, sir.
Thank you, sir. So thus came the Tata AIG General Insurance and Tata AIG Life Insurance, which is now Tata AIA Life Insurance. And then you built several other businesses for AIG in financial services, ranging from private equity, real estate, home finance, consumer finance, software development, mortgage guarantee, aircraft leasing, and of course, the asset management business, AIG Mutual Fund. At the peak, you were at the helm of a conglomerate with over 13,000 employees. Would you like to share your thought process building these businesses into strong, lasting institutions?
So, as I started with, Nareshji, that I am a homegrown professional. I did work with Citibank for 18.5 years for a foreign entity. There were opportunities to go overseas because after a certain point, there are jobs, there were limited number of job possibilities in the country. So they send you overseas. The pyramid gets narrow. Whether it was by design or by accident, I chose that I'm going to stay in the country because India was going through a transition from the old world to the new world. And post 92, 93 in particular, we were moving into what was the growing India. So where else could I have those opportunities as a homegrown Indian? I stood with Citibank. In 2000, when this opportunity came with AIG, the way I looked at it, I didn't know anything about insurance. I don't know why. I asked Greenberg, why are you asking me to be the country head? Because I'm not a domain expertise. I was in banking. And his response was, if I wanted somebody who knows insurance to be the country head, I wouldn't have called for you. I would have chosen these from amongst the thousands of people that are hanging around in this building in New York where our headquarters were. He said, I want somebody to be there who knows India. And that was his point, that you know India, you will be able to navigate, you'll be able to do, because, it's an operational thing if you sort of get into this thing. And I took that very seriously. That's why I started looking at all those businesses that you just mentioned, that if we have those verticals inside AIG, why shouldn't I get those verticals into the country if there was a business opportunity, a real business opportunity, and if our Indian regulations were conducive to a foreign entity coming into the country? So I was like a ambassador, which Mr. Piyush Goyal is like a selling trade, selling India and doing these FTAs. So I was like an ambassador, India ambassador in AIG because they were the probably the largest or second largest market cap of a financial conglomerate at that time. And for me, the biggest excitement was if I could get a business vertical to commit putting investments and studying the Indian market and making that grow and hire quality talent from India. And, as I will tell you that this was a great experience that with the AIG brand and with the ability that there was a market opportunity and the Indian regulators at that point of time, because AIG was a very, very well-known and a AAA respected entity. And you spoke about the asset management company. I remember when I was preparing for the asset management company incorporation in India, I went to meet the chairman of SEBI that time, Mr. Damodaran was the chairman. And I said, AIG is planning to come in, this is what we want to do. So, and we were doing our own business plans. A month later, Mr. Damodaran calls me and says, where is your application? Now, this is Indian regulator saying that where is your application? And then, of course, we sort of, and Naresh knows about as to how we started it because a very good person that we hired as the CEO was also a very dear friend of Naresh ji. So I think each business was very, very selectively identified and with an opportunity to grow in the country. And all of those businesses were growing at an exponential rate. So we were actually on the poised to become a behemoth, a financial conglomerate behemoth until the 2008 financial crisis happened. So that's where things changed.
Thank you. So the gentleman he was talking about the CEO of the gentleman he was talking about a CEO of AIG Mutual Fund. He's a good friend. He's a Kolkata, originally from Calcutta. He's Saurabh Sonthalia, who happens to be now an independent director on the board of our company. So world is that small.
Very small. So. So I'm just one last thing on this if I want to leave this message. I think again the takeaway on this is that if you sort of believe in this country and you believe in this market, I think it's not just saying that this is a great market, but you have to sort of actually start the process from beginning to the end in terms of implementing the blueprint that you have. And if you show from your personal commitment, your body language, because people are actually watching you, people who are leaving their careers in other institutions, they're actually looking at your body language and saying that if he is committed and he's telling us this story that we will, AIG or whatever company, we believe in you and we will ensure that we collectively make it happen. And this is how individuals, high quality, talented professionals like Saurabh Sonthalia and many others put their bet on the company and then came in and sort of made a success out of what we were doing.
Well, that was wonderful, I think. So, Sunil, what are the defining characteristics that enable a business organization to outlive its founders and build successive leadership teams? How did you go about selecting the CEOs and CXOs of these businesses? What were the qualities that you were looking into them, and what did you want to avoid it?
Very good question, Naresh. I think here, if I have to give credit to something that I had personally experienced, I would give my founding years at Citibank, the 18 years that I spent at Citi, as my training ground in terms of different values that we picked up as young, impressionable management associates to a senior level individuals with responsibilities. I think the biggest element that was visible as a banker when we joined City at a very young age was integrity. That was kind of non-negotiable. I mean, that when you walked in, sort of, that's what was expected from, because without that, as a banker, you can't be there. The second is commitment, that whatever you do, the bank will look after you and they will take care of your lodging, they'll pay you reasonably well, but commitment to work. I mean, there are no waking hours, there are no ending hours, but commitment to delivering whatever are your goals and objectives. Third is identifying good quality talent. So, because the more you identify and bring in the initial few people who are talented and have these virtues of being high integrity and well respected in the market, it sort of brings in much more high quality, it attracts, it's like honeybees. So it attracts talent. And so some of those were part and parcel of me in my own DNA. And I think that helped us in sort of going out to the market and identifying people with high levels of integrity, highly competent, good technical skills, and the ability to work in teams. If you can't work in teams and you're a kind of an individual who has ego issues or, I mean, it's like a cricket team. Okay, I mean, you have a team that is coalesces well, a team delivers. A team that is not coalescing well, you may have the most talented cricketers in that, but unfortunately, they're not able to kind of win matches. So this is actually building a team. And there were lots of things that we did to make sure that we attract the talent pool. When I was just sitting and you were away from the room, I was just sharing with somebody is that when we used to hire about 20, 30 people, I used to call them to my boardroom in the office. And I would want to integrate them because we had 10 different companies and we would want to integrate them into what we called as Power of One or AIG One. I would sort of, like this room, I would sort of go around the table and ask these youngsters who came from different fields of life. First question was, what is the name that your mother calls you by? So, you know, some Pappu, some Tappu, and some this and that. And they would sort of and people would take notes. So next time if they started fighting on emails, somebody will say, Pappu, just shut up. Now don't sort of waste time on this. The second question is, tell me something about yourself which no one knows. And that's a tough one. So the third question was, what are the passions that you have? What are the interests? By and large, everybody would say, I used to play cricket, I used to do this, I used to sing, I used to do this thing. So my question was that in our employment contract, is there anything that prohibits you from pursuing your passions or your interests, sort of build your own personality? The last question, I didn't ask for an answer, but I said you just think about it yourself, that are you more interesting to your spouse or partner today than what you were when you joined the institution? But just leave that thought, that sort of, and I said to them why this is. So I said, listen, when you join the company, we give you a visiting card. And so in the front side of the visiting card, other than your name, as a company, we have the right to change everything. Your designation, your office, which company you work for. And I said, what most of you forget is that, and you fight for everything here in the front of the card because you want all that you want to, become an assistant manager to vice president to president, managing director. Now, I don't even know what titles they sort of give people because nobody's satisfied with managing director titles. So I said, but what you forget, look at the backside, it's an empty side. Ask yourself every 2 weeks, what have you done for yourself? What is it that you have done to make your personality much more interesting, that you have pursued your interests, that you have become a much more wholesome person than just fighting and spending all your waking hours in the front side. Because when you leave the company, you will leave the front side of the card with the company, but what you will really carry is the back side of the card, and that is your true equity. Think about it and just decide. It's not that I'm wanting all of you to leave the company, but pursue your interests equally. And I think that wasn't a kind of a, I think a lot of this came from the heart, and people sort of said that these are the virtues and the values that you want to build in an institution. I think that's really all those attributes that I can start. There'll be lots more, but sort of which comes to my memory, and I say that all that worked, and we had a very good talent pool, and sort of all those companies were doing exceptionally well. As I said again, till 2008 when we had to sell them.
Super. I think that's very, very useful sharing you have done that, because selecting CXOs is a difficult proposition, and everybody struggles with that. On this note, let me fast forward a bit for a while. A visionary entrepreneur created Yes Bank, which you led at a later date. He ideated and founded the bank successfully and grew it into amongst the fastest growing private sector banks in the country. But where did he fail as a business leader to be in the situation he led his bank and himself?
You're referring to the promoters.
If, yes, of course, if you were to be a professional CEO at Yes Bank, then evolving strategies on behalf of the investors, how would you have overcome the ego of the investor and create a successful, enduring organization?
This is a very tough question. So, you know, there were two banking licenses that were given together, private sector banking licenses. One was in, I think, early 2003 or 4, if I remember correctly. One was Kotak Bank, and the other was Yes Bank. Rana Kapoor got Yes Bank, and Uday Kotak got Kotak Bank's license. And if you map that history, both the banks did exceptionally well. They sort of grew at an exponential pace. They became very valuable banks in the market from a market capitalization point of view. And everything was going well. You could say that one was going a little faster than the other, and one had a larger price to book than maybe the other one. But they had a huge market share, had a very growth, and of course HDFC Bank and ICICI were there as, Axis were there as large private sector banks early stages. So it was a very good market scan of banks, competitive market scan that were there for banks. For whatever reason, Yes Bank went into difficulty. That was way back in 2018, 19 mostly, and the RBI and government stepped in to do a reconstruction of Yes Bank in March of 2020, and they appointed a reconstruction board and a new CEO who took over, and they changed the whole board, and we were sort of asked to do the reconstruction of Yes Bank. And when we took over, the first board meeting actually took place on March 23, 2020, if I remember correctly, and that was the day of the lockdown. So the entire reconstruction of Yes Bank, from the board's perspective, was done online. For 2 years, as a board, we could not shake hands with each other because of the COVID limitations. So it's a fascinating story about the resuscitation of a bank which ran into serious difficulty by the board and the management and the new management. And there was, of course, a lot of the leadership of the previous dispensation that was there. Now, if I was to give the full credit, I'll dwell a little time because this is a very interesting case study, that when we took over, there was liquidity escaping from the bank because of the issues that the bank was facing. There was business not coming in. Our employees were homebound because of the COVID conditions, and that was between COVID 1 and COVID 2, which is the more difficult period, this COVID 2. So there were, and of course there was this whole pressure on the bank of identifying people who were associated with the previous management, and perhaps they were sort of in some way impaired. But we said that our first priority is the customer. We have to kind of give the customer confidence. Unless the customer gets confidence, we will not get deposits or liquidity back into the system. We had a 50,000 crore short-term facility from the Reserve Bank of India, which had a maturity of first 3 months, and they gave us a 3 months extension. So within that period, we had to repay those 50,000 crores and to kind of salvage the bank, get the deposits back, and get the employees motivated to go out and get deposits in a credible manner. After all, none of them knew what the outcome of this reconstruction would be, but we had to give them the faith and the confidence that this will work. And then, of course, we had that 10,000 crores of equity infusion from the banks who participated in the reconstruction, led by State Bank of India. So there was a lot riding on the decisions that this board and the leadership of the bank were taking, and we needed additional capital because that 10,000 crore was not adequate. So this was in March, April, May. We then decided that we needed to raise capital. We needed what the bank told us, the management, that we needed 15,000 additional capital. Now, in the peak of COVID, we said, how do we assess that we're going to get 15,000 crores? So we went through a process of identifying merchant bankers. We got 6 merchant bankers, and they gave us their advice. Now, the question was that it was a split advice, whether you should go for 15,000 crores in one go or to divide it between 7,500 and 7,500, go in two. So, buck stops at you. You have to take a call. And we decided that we will go for full 15,000 crores. And by July of 2020, we were able to raise that 50,000 crores. There was some shortfall, but it was about 1,500 crores, but it was underwritten, so we could sort of get that. But I think what it comes here is that ultimately what worked was team spirit, teamwork, and the belief collectively, with the great support of Reserve Bank of India and all the other stakeholders that we had, that we can make it happen. I can't tell you all the issues that we had to face during this period, but they were enormous. You can imagine how challenging it is. But I give credit to those 24,000 employees that we had, not worrying about their personal safety, security. Of course, we had all the precautions, but they went out, collected the deposits, gave confidence. Ultimately, they were the ones who were in touch with the customers. They are the ones who sort of gave the confidence to the customers, and we were able to then assimilate all of that and give confidence to the different stakeholders. So it's really comes down to teamwork to sort of be able to deal with complex situations like this, and the bank has been resuscitated. One of the important elements was also, as a great thing that was happening, is on the technology platform of that bank was very good. And that continues to be one of the hallmarks of that bank. And that helped us to do with all those things that we could do, other than just, if you're manually doing everything, it would have been much more difficult. So there were some good legacies that were also there.
Mehtaji, you have been so passionately handling that. You have narrated what was supposed to come at a later question. My question was, and I repeat for you to, such a maverick entrepreneur who promoted this bank, where did he go wrong? What happened? And if you would have been, as a professional CEO there, what things you would have avoided or did differently?
I'll address that. I didn't want to. I'm sorry if I missed it in the first go, but I'll address it now. So again, these are my personal opinions. This is not sort of an official statement of any institution. I think the primary base that I would say is governance. Yeah, I come to that same aspect that actually you said it. I'm not saying something else. In your opening speech, ethics, reputation, behavior, structure. These are all words that you use. And I didn't know that you were going to ask me this question, so I just jotted these down. And one thing that I want to say is identifying risks and being able to take the risk that the enterprise can actually deal with. So if you put all of that together, I think perhaps at some point I would say that the pace of growth that sort of you have to sort of believe in that sustainable growth rate theory. Simple stuff. Don't get pressured by all these analysts. Don't get pressured by people who do all the, what is it called, those investors who are sort of trying to push you that I want 15% growth quarter on quarter or whatever the growth is. And then if you get carried away by the market cap and if you have a lot of personal equity, the ESOPs and all of that, I think you have to sort of balance it by actually saying that I have now identified all these risks and transparently share it with all the stakeholders. It's not just your investor community, but the regulators. And because it's really ultimately the management and the leadership which has probably a full assessment of all the risks that are there in the underbelly of any institution. The faster you recognize those risks and lay it on the table, and then sort of collectively with the leadership and the board decide that these risks are acceptable, it is within the capital that we have, and we are really well covered. Bank is actually what a bank. The banks are in the business of taking risks. So that is an acceptable. And then of course certain amount goes out of that, what is called the parameters of enterprise risks that you can take together. So it's a combination of all of those, and I think some other factors in terms of behavioral issues also. The human behavioral aspect of that comes into play. So perhaps a lot of this, if collectively it had been looked at more closely, I would say, in hindsight, I can say some of these issues that happened could have been avoided.
So thank you for answering this. Thank you for answering this because we all say sometimes that we either make money or we learn. And if we can learn at other people's cost, I mean, that's more wonderful. So that's why, this question that what mistake a maverick, such a successful creative ideator and a business leader could make and still get into and trapped into making some mistakes. So that's what I just thought, you have watched that from close angles and if you could share. So that's
Rishji, in this, I would also like to add, if you don't mind,
yes,
butting in, because it's very important. See, at the end of the day, all of you are business people who are taking some tough decisions. If you either are so iconic a personality that nobody wants to shout out loud to you and tell you what these risks are, or you envelop yourself with people who are all yes men, you do not have the ability to kind of have somebody telling you that perhaps this is not the right path and you need to revisit it. This ecosystem must be prepared, must be built, because nobody is picture perfect. And actually, greed is one aspect. You may have the whole desire to grow because you want to be seen as the fastest growing institution. There may be other aspects of it. It's not just personal gain, but it could be other aspects of ego, and those come in the play. So trying to sort of have somebody around you, whether it's the board or some people within your leadership or in family businesses, some family member, Because when you become a patriarch of that business, it is possible that one or two decisions that you make out of 10 or 20 could go wrong. Or the risks are too high. You need to have somebody who can sit with you and walk you through that these risks are not acceptable. This is not good for the institution. If you don't have that ecosystem, you could end up into a very difficult situation. So, and these are not that inevitability, but these have been, there's enough proof to say that this happens.
Excellent. Thank you. So let us now, ladies and gentlemen, move to the other half of today's topic, managing crisis. It appears that crisis and you have a close relationship. Very early into your career, while you were at Citibank, it faced a reputational crisis in the aftermath of the Mehta scam of 1992, which is more, if you call it more, if we want to avoid names, then you can call it a security scam of 1992.
Yeah, security.
Faced by exit of other senior leaders in your bank, you were given the responsibility to handle that crisis. You were quite young at that time. Would you like to share some of your experiences and learnings?
Yeah, I'll just make one correction on that, that there was, of course, very strong leadership in Citibank also at that point of time. I was based out of Delhi, and I was given the responsibility to be the coordinator, because there was if you remember, there was a joint parliamentary committee that had been established to look at the security scam. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Mehta was the chairman of that committee. There were 30 members of parliament, and all the financial institutions which were ensnared into that crisis or that security scam had to make a representation to that joint parliamentary committee. So I was kind of doing the groundwork, sitting from New Delhi on that front. But I did see I was also the head of the public sector business, where a lot of these transactions were taking place. I was on the corporate side of the business, and there was the investment banking side that was sort of the originator. But having a very close view of what had happened, it again comes down to, was this an issue, not just Citibank, I would say all those institutions, wanting to maximize profits for their respective institutions. There were of course brokers on the other side, leave that because that goes into their personal kitty. But for many of these institutions, higher profits or showing that you were able to get higher returns on the PMSs and the portfolio management schemes that were there, and the securities transactions based on those bankers' receipts and all of that, was really profits for the institution. And I think the aspect of again drawing a line as to what you need to, how much of risk that you take, and what is completely kosher and not kosher. This is again an issue that should be there in front of every leader's mind, because ultimately there's the leaders who are responsible for driving the businesses. The second, as I said, do you have people inside the institution? There's no board here because we were a branch of a bank, but compliance, regulatory. So these are not, were they strong enough to identify that there were some aspects which are not compliant with the rules and regulations? And there were again elements that were there which were highly risky than what was being done. So understanding of the regulation, because see, at the end of the day, compliance, you could actually be, sometimes it's just pure black and white, sometimes it's sort of, there's a thin line, and sometimes there are areas of gray. And you could sort of play around on the areas of gray. So I, over a period of time, have sort of learned that if I'm dealing with somebody else's money, and I'm an employee of that institution, and I'm not dealing with my personal wealth, I would sort of stay completely in the white. I would never even personally, I won't even go into grey. I mean, that's my call. But everybody who's in different responsibilities will have their own calls. So I think this is where but it was a very interesting as a youngster, and again say that we were young people in that organization. When this happened, we took it on ourselves as the team that was responsible to deal with this situation, to really give our best in terms of working together, doing the best for the institution, representing the institution wherever we had to kind of, or being into negotiations with counterparties and to do settlements, and being honest to the bank itself and to the management who were looking into this much later, that listen, these were commitments that were made and we need to honor it. It may not have been in writing, but if you have given your word in banking, it's really your trust. If you have given your word of mouth that this is what return you are going to get on the PMS, you have to honor it. And that, I think, was a role that some of us played in sort of responding internally, apart from whatever external responsibility. This is just one of the few characteristics, because regardless of the consequences, as I said, you have to put your hand on your heart and say that this is the right thing for the institution. That's really, if you can pass that litmus test and say that I have done the right thing, that's the best thing.
Consciousness.
Yes, consciousness.
Sunilji, you so arduously built 10 businesses for AIG in India, employing over 13,000 employees at one point of time. And then the global financial crisis 2008 hit AIG globally. You were not responsible for it, but found yourself in a very, very vulnerable situation which could be quite overwhelming for anyone. You had to let go of almost everything that you built over 8-9 years. While building these businesses, you must have promised many things to many people, and now found yourself so helpless. How did you handle that situation? And what learnings can you share from that experience with members here?
Oh, memories flow back of mid-September 2008. This was on a Friday, if I remember, the Friday before that, September 15th Friday, which was the Monday, if I remember correctly, 14th, 13th, 12th. On September, so at that time I had the vice chairman, you know, that Frank Wisner was in town. So we got a call from somebody in New York. It must be around 4 p.m. giving an indication to us that AIG is in trouble. And both of us had just gone to meet the regulators in Bombay and in Delhi. And we were launching a big public positioning of AIG through branding and all of that. And we were in the back seat of this car that was taking us from this meeting to the fair. And both of us just sank. We couldn't believe it, that this is something like that to a company of our size. And in 2000, when we were hiring people, we would say this is the AAA, one of this amongst, Citibank had a $250 billion market cap, we were at 230 at that time. So we were amongst the strongest financial conglomerates in the world. And you would hire people on that basis, that we are here to stay. And suddenly when this hits you, you can't imagine the kind of things that go in your mind. What's going to happen? So the weekend, we continued with, on Saturday we had meetings, we continued with the same meetings. There were 20 editors, opinion makers, policy makers, businessmen. We were meeting at the Oberoi in New Delhi, and we met them. But there was something, as I said, dil bhari tha. कुछ समझ नहीं आ रही थी कि क्या हो रहा है. Anyway, he left for New York, and on Sunday night and Monday morning, it started coming to us that there is a bailout discussions that are taking place with the US Fed and the US government. And then, so the next 2 days were completely horrific because nobody in AIG New York at our headquarters was accessible, reachable, because they were busy in saving the company or the group there. And so we started sort of doing what we had to do to protect our franchise in the country. 10 companies, 13,000 employees. And so I, as a country head, took an assessment of whatever we have in the insurance company. Solvency margins were high, capital was, I had pulled in a lot of capital from New York, and all our companies were very well capitalized. However, in a market, in a situation like this, competitors start pulling you down. So people who were sort of gossiping in the marketplace, the negative news that AIG is in trouble, they will not honor their policies and all of that. So I had to kind of speak with all the regulators, speak with our joint venture partners, the Tatas, and do a full assessment. The chairman of IIDA was being completely kept appraised of how our solvency margins were, capital was, and so were the other regulators. At that point of time, on the AMC side, there was so much of skittishness. There was another major private sector Indian bank that had also some negative news, and the funds were kind of also escaping our AMC. But between Saurabh Santhalia, the CEO that time, and myself, we decided that we will not break the buck. Break the buck means that we will honor all redemptions that come. And how do you do it? If you don't have this thing, you have to use your capital. Now the law or the regulations were silent whether you can use your capital. But we took a call that we will not. And now these are some of those decisions that you have to make at the spur of the moment. Nobody is there to kind of coach you, guide you, tell you, instruct you. What you say is what is the best for that institution and all the stakeholders. You have to make those calls. On the negative news, on Tuesday afternoon, there was so much of negative news. So the head of corporate communications came to me and said that you have to speak to the press. And I said, well, what can I tell them? I mean, I don't know whether we'll get salvaged or we'll get a bailout. The AIG will get a bailout. So finally I said, fine. As long as what is under my control, I will talk about it. My Indian companies are safe, they are very well capitalized, and we have a game plan for each one of them. So I spoke to 42 correspondents, both electronic and print media, between 2:30 p.m. and 10 o'clock that night. And then many of them started changing, going on to NDTV included. They went to the media and they changed it because I gave them all the facts, and they were righteousness. I mean, the quality of the journalism, I have to commend them for that. They went and sort of gave the right commentary in this thing. So it started taking the media attention from wherever we were and putting it correctly. I'm not saying that they were not there. Now this is what happened. At 10:30 at night, after I've spoken to all this, I get a call from New York, and I was told that we may not get a bailout. Now we were all sort of, if you don't get a bailout, the company is not going to survive. So I said, my gosh, I've already spoken to so many journalists, I've spoken to this. And then I asked him, I said, listen, if we don't get a bailout and we go into liquidation, what am I supposed to do? Who do I hand over the keys to? He said, I wish I knew. I have never faced a situation like this in my life. So he says, all I can advise you is carry your Rolodesk home tonight. You will need it for your next job. I said, thank you so much. It was at about 1:30 that night when I was sitting in the room all alone, and I told all the CEOs who were sitting with me, go home, that I got a message back that New York Fed has decided to give AIG an $82.5 billion bailout package. $82.5 billion US dollars. So at 1:30 or 2 a.m. in the morning, I asked my staff who were sitting with me, now go home, now stop crying, and that we have another day to live tomorrow. So here, what I'm trying to convey to Nareshi and all the team that is here is you will in your life you face with some completely out of your control conditions. And by the way, I must tell you this, the business unit that was responsible for the downfall of AIG, which was AIG Financial Products, that was the only business as a country head I did not allow to come into India. Because I was not comfortable with that business. It was too risky a business, and as a banker, I understood that. Only business. So they went to Hong Kong and then started sending people from Hong Kong here. I said, that's fine, but you do not get an office space in my country. So anyway, I think the learning is that when you have your back to the wall, don't despair. You do whatever is right. The rest is in God's hand. That bailout was not in my control. That came, but I always used to then share this with all the other people, that when you are down to the bottom, there's always a rise from there. And that rise is something that you should thank the Lord or whoever else you want to thank, your partner, your spouse, your friends, your employees, that we are now on. So when you've seen the worst, it cannot be worse than that. And that's where I think you sort of, it gives you the balance, and it also builds a degree of resilience, that you can see some downturns, you can see some difficult times, but there will be better times that will follow.
And I remember you sharing with me that each of the businesses, except Tata AIG, General Insurance did not had to move out, but each of the businesses
We found a new
home. Each of the employees found a new home before he left AIG.
I found a new home for all the 13,000 employees. Of course, Tata AIG and Tata AIG Life continued. But
That was something.
the biggest satisfaction that you did not let the people who had looked into your eyes down, even in adversity, that they continued with those entities and they had some time, because each in all those, when they were acquired by somebody else, you had a 1-year lock-in that you cannot fire any of those employees. So it gave them enough time to figure out whether they wanted to stay with that company or they wanted to move on.
उस समय में, उस पीरियड में आपके साथ मेरे कलकत्ता में 2 डिनर हुए थे। कुछ तो मैंने भी कुछ रोल प्ले किया होगा शायद।
मैंने ये शुरू में भी ये बोला था, and I repeat this again, that in all of this, it is only teamwork, collectively. ये आप कभी नहीं श्रेय ले सकते कि ये मैंने करा है, या I'm sorry if I'm speaking in chaste Hindi, but I just want to say that you cannot take the credit with yourself that you are the only one who has sort of done this. It is the ecosystem, it is your team, it is the people who believe in you, and people who are doing all the hard work on the ground. At the end of the day, these are very complicated, operating companies like the AMC. Saurabh will tell you that how much of work that on his own personal credibility, people kept the money in the AMC.
About the dinners, I was just kidding, sir, but I remember in what details you used to share with me what's going on actually, and there was so much of learning, sir, from those dinners. Yeah. So, Sunil ji, in 2017, one of India's strongest PSU banks, Punjab National Bank, was hit by the Nirav Modi scam, right? When you were asked to step in as a non-executive chairman, what was your mandate, what did you find, and most importantly, how did you manage the situation while you were not in an executive position?
So, actually, the fraud came to light when I was already there. So I joined in, I think, March or April of 2017, and this came to light in January of 2018. So anyway, as it sort of came into light, we had to kind of, there was obviously at that point of time, it was a huge amount of about 13,500 to 14,000 crores, which is not a small amount. So dealing with the government, dealing with the regulators, that time Mr. Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley was the finance minister, sort of, he was very concerned that what will the parliament, how will they deal with it. So it was a very public positioning that had happened on this whole adverse negative publicity that the bank got. I think the important thing was to kind of again rally the troops, build the confidence of all the shareholders, the regulators, to go and engage with the regulators, and also find out what really led to this insight. how do you deal with some of the control issues that were there? Rotation of employees, was there enough reconciliation that was taking place between the SWIFT and the core banking system? So there was and then you see, it's not just a one incident. When an incident like this happens, the whole bank comes under a microscope. So it's not just focusing on that, but you've got to look at all the other areas where there could be issues relating to controls. So it was a phenomenal exercise of dealing with all the control gaps, working together to make sure that those control gaps were dealt with in a time-bound manner, giving the confidence to the regulators that we are dealing with it, and also the shareholders. I remember the first EGM we had when we had to deal with going to our shareholders. It was a physical meeting that time, and it was a North India, Punjabis, good lot of their vocals, voluble in sort of what they. It's a fascinating, and I think that is a video recording of it. Agar kabhi ki wo mile to I'll share it. But it was a question of how do you appease who have lost money? How do you appease them? So they came almost to the podium and wanting an answer. And I think the answer was that yes, we apologize for what has happened. It shouldn't have ever happened for an institution of this size. Take it with humility, but also tell them that the bank is now working, and all these employees who are sitting around this room, they are working day and night, and they have been their reputations have taken a hit. उनके जब बच्चे जाते हैं स्कूल में, and then somebody asks you, your father works in PNB, बड़ी शर्म आती. So I think these people, that I said to them, that these people are now working day and night to make good, to correct whatever is there. And I let them speak and let them talk whatever they wanted to say, but after that I spoke to them. And at the end of the EGM, they said, Jai Ho PNB ki hum aapke saath hain. And I think that's really कि आपको भावनाओं से, भावनाएं होती हैं लोगों की, उनको आपको डरना नहीं है, गलती हुई है, एक्सेप्ट करिए और आगे चलिए.
Super. This was wonderful, sir. Sir, you have already mentioned about the links from Yes Bank, but on that note, a question that intrigues me is, markets are volatile and public confidence is fragile. Okay. Should the leader's first priority be protecting capital, protecting people, or protecting trust?
In actually a lot of this is almost sort of synergistic because your capital will get protected if you have people believe in you and the customers are there and you're able to do business. Otherwise, your capital is getting eroded because the market sort of is really brutal in these matters. So, and if the customers start believing in you and you protect the customer, the trust starts flowing in. So there are actions that you have to undertake within the institution at different levels to make sure that you start building the trust not by saying, but by actually implementing what needs to be done and by executing whatever has been agreed upon. So it's a combination of all three that have to work.
So coming to your IndusInd Bank, you were the non-executive chairman at IndusInd Bank till January of this year. An episode there led to a top leadership crisis there. Many of the CXOs, including the CEO, they left the bank. How did you handle that situation as chairman of the board? At board level.
So, I think handling of that situation is something that I can say with all honesty. No business school prepares me for that. कोई management case study नहीं है या कोई ऐसी कोई आप जाके पढ़ नहीं सकते कि in a situation like this because well so I think you have to throw all that you've learned in a traditional way and sort of deal with that situation because we were actually having a huge problem in terms of the leadership. There was really, we didn't have a CEO, we didn't have a deputy CEO, we didn't have a CFO. So the board and the RBI got together and formed what was called the Oversight Committee of the board, where there were 4 members of the board, including me as the board chair. And there were 2 committee of executives who were doing the day-to-day operations. So we were supposed to provide them support. And the 2 committee of executives will do it. This is quite unusual for a bank, because in a bank you would want one particular CEO. So, but this is not the first time. There have been 1 or 2 other cases that have happened in a situation like this. So we obviously had to get involved a lot more from a board's perspective and deal with the situation as it unfolded. We had a time limitation in terms of how fast we could hire a CEO and bring the CEO on board, because you can't run a bank in that structure, so you have to get a CEO. And there were also many other people below which were identified in terms of individuals that who had to be hired: internal audit, legal head, CFO, and there were. So apart from managing the bank during a crisis, we almost became like a search firm. I mean, I must have done about 100 to 150 interviews during that period. It was 7 days a week. We used to start as a board call every morning, 6:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning. All the board members would get onto a board call. Then I would have to have a call with the RBI every day. So I think there was a lot of work that was being put in. And I again come to the same point. I have to give full credit to the board and the committee of executives that sort of worked collaboratively. None of this, you as a leader actually just allocate responsibilities and you want to take some responsibility on your own. But every board member has to believe that this is really what's the right direction forward. And every board member also has a right to say, maybe you should do things a little differently. Maybe this is not right. Maybe this candidate is not right, or maybe you need to. I think it was a combination of all of that that was put into play. And again, same issue when a bank is in a crisis, to deal with a liquidity situation, all the elements that you have to fix the control gaps very fast, because otherwise the market is saying that I don't know whether I should stay invested in that institution. And you have to show that you are sort of doing all the right corrective work. And give the confidence. So I think the bank is now in a much better position. And I had, during that analyst call or whatever it is when we posted the results, I said the bank and the board will do everything without fear or favor and do whatever is right to rebuild the institution and prepare a clean slate for the next CEO to come and take over. And that's what we did.
Thank you. And Mr. Mehta had to find a CEO who studied in Kolkata.
Yes.
And he is an alumni of Birla High School in Kolkata, and so Calcutta connections have continued.
But by the way, his CV didn't say all of that, so I can't say that I relied on that really.
Last question for me before we open now for the audience questions. It's a longer one, but very different note. So while founding various businesses for AIG in India, you must have also formed their boards. What was your thought process in selecting and appointing independent directors on these boards? So in the interest of time, I clubbed 2 questions into one. So what was your thought process in appointing independent directors for these boards? You too have served as an independent director on the boards of large companies, including State Bank of India, where you also served as chairman of its audit committee. There is a paradox here. While there is a need for good organizations to have an effective board of directors with eminent people and good board policies, but eminent people find it too risky to join boards as independent directors. How to navigate this paradox? What would you suggest to entrepreneurs desiring to found ideal boards and to prospective independent directors?
We're short on time, so I'll be very brief on this, but it's a very, very important question for everybody. So, I think the role of an independent director is evolving at a very fast pace. Originally, as per the Companies Act, whatever is required of an independent director is well articulated. Independence, discharging their fiduciary responsibilities, code of conduct. Um, the independent director is now, uh, the responsibility of an independent director is becoming complex because of the changing technologies, the whole issue of cybersecurity, the enterprise risks that are there, which are quite different, geopolitical risks. So there's a lot that independent director has to carry on his or her plate as discharging their responsibilities. I again say, without fear or favor. And you have to be forthright in saying what you have to say. And it must get minuted. It must get documented, because now, of course, a lot of board meetings are video recorded, so that's fine. But it must be in the minutes that the discussions. It's not just that the board passed this resolution and said what it, but who said what during this conversation is very important. And I'll start with my role at State Bank of India as an independent director. I was very, very fortunate to be identified and to be brought in as a shareholder independent director. So there were 4 of us at that time, Mr. Mehta, Mr. N.D. Malia, Deepak Amin, myself, and there was another Citibank colleague of mine, Sunil. So we were part of what was called the executive committee of the board, where we used to meet once every week by law, 52 times a year, because all credit proposals of certain magnitude would come to this executive committee of the board, and large operating decisions also used to come to us. Arundhati Bhattacharya was the chairperson at that point in time. And I think if you talk to some people in SBI who were part of that boardroom at that point of time, youngsters or past board members, they would sort of certainly be very complimentary in terms of how the independent director's role was played by all of us. And that's a great compliment. And why was this? We had a chairperson who was listening, and she gave us the space to talk. So she created an environment where all of us could speak. We used to prepare a lot for our board meetings and come fully prepared for those meetings once a week, because we would get othas like this. Us waqt iPad nahi hota tha. So we used to get this much of reading material 3 days or 2 days before that weekly meeting. And some of us would be up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning reading it. And if I couldn't finish it, I would call up one more board member and say, listen, I can't, you ask a question on this one because I haven't seen this properly. So it was a good coalescence. I think that was what makes this board independence such a unique proposition. We did what was right for the institution. We spoke out, and we were able to get bank, at least if it was even a bank like largest State Bank of India, 1 or 2 degrees in terms of where we could add value. I think it was a great contribution. Today, the role of independent directors has become much larger. Post some of the crisis that you saw recently, both SEBI and RBI came out with, at least in the financial markets, post a particular incident as to what they expect from independent directors, because they just can't resign without giving a good reason. So that means they have to express themselves much more effectively in terms of what is creating some degree of dissonance or what is creating discomfort. So I think I wouldn't say that everybody should be scared of taking on independent director roles, but you have to be cognizant. This is not a walk in the park. You have to be cognizant that there's a role that you have to play, and you have a lot of stakeholders who are depending on you to make sure that you are doing the right thing and the best, discharging your fiduciary interest. So the risks, the enterprise risks, are increasing exponentially. You must be comfortable in working and identifying. So whether it is data issues, cybersecurity issues, the whole issue of AI. Now that is sort of, people are asking, how is AI going to play a role in discharging your fiduciary? AI can help you in certain ways, but it cannot take away the judgment that is required from an independent director. So I think, please, if you get opportunities, do not run away from making full use of those opportunities as an independent director. These are, I said, great learnings which no management school can tell you, teach you about it. But you have to be prepared in dealing with it in a manner that you feel that you are responding to every situation in the right way.
I remember you having shared this with me that your stint as an independent director at State Bank of India actually prepared you for handling the crisis in public sector banks like PNB or even Yes Bank that you have been able to handle.
Yes.
That actually prepared you to be able to do what
It was a phenomenal, I would say. My credit goes because you learn the macro and you learn the micro. It's a combination of both. And that is because of the fabulous institution, and I have no hesitation in saying that India is blessed with the largest bank being an absolutely fabulous institution. And that has been actually coming down a legacy. It's not this one leader who has made that happen. Today it is Mr. Sethi, tomorrow it will be somebody else, and his predecessors all have played a role, including the current chairperson.
Thank you so much, Shri. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure it was a fantastic conversation that you have enjoyed. We are running out of time, but since we started 10 minutes late, 5 minutes we'll have some quick questions, and questions only, no statements, from everybody here. Yeah, who would like to go ahead? Yes, Saurabh.
Government of India has recently allowed 100% FDI in insurance just last year, and a few days ago we saw Avaya taking over 100% of life. So what took Government of India so long, and why was it there was so much sensitivity about it in the first place? How did it change the landscape of insurance in India going forward?
I think the evolution of the insurance sector from 2000, when the first amendment took place to the Insurance Act, was a path breaking because there were only state-owned entities that were sort of doing insurance. There were no private sector because all those old private sector companies were nationalized, insurance nationalization were all put into New India and the three others, and then of course on the life, it was Life Insurance Corporation. So you're coming from a completely, this was the only sector which was completely dominated by state-owned insurers. In banking, there were foreign banks and there were private sector banks. So you can imagine that at that point of time, when you have to pass a legislation as to how much of angst it causes to employees of these institutions and different stakeholders, ideologically as well, who felt that this could take away the jobs of our existing. But what has emerged from 2000 now, that the entire sector has grown. And if you see LIC's dominance, LIC has maybe 60% or whatever, I don't know the exact number, market share, but they have grown exponentially well. New India has also grown. And what were the weaknesses in some of the insurance companies has also now come out. So they have also kind of dealing with that aspect of it. And I think ultimately, who has won? The consumer. So, and then if you look at what the government has done, the government is now starting this like a public commerce platform, so that you can compare your insurance, Jeevan Bima, Jeevan Sugam, I think. So where you can compare all the policies that you are. There's a huge amount of, in the last 25 years since it has opened, I would say the Indian insurance sector has gone through a transformation. Now there are new companies that are coming which are purely B2C. They are not going to have intermediaries who are digital players like ACO and all of that. So they will all play a role, some of them state-owned, some of them private, and some completely foreign. And I think it's sort of a Viva. I think it's a very welcome move. It may have taken us 25 years, but you have to do it in a calibrated manner because you have to manage all stakeholders.
Thank you, Prashant, for the question. Yes, Saurabh, now.
Didn't hear you.
No, we repeat it.
So, thank you, sir. Very, very pertinent question. I briefly touched on it when I was answering earlier that the uh, different risks that are now emerging, independent directors need to be far more conversant in how to deal with those risks. And from a corporate governance point of view, it is also very important to see as to how you construct a board, because it's not possible to get board members who are adept in everything. So you need to create a construct of a board where there are people who are very comfortable in either security risks like cyber security, technology. Then there are others who have a very good overview on the economy, are able to sort of judge in terms of the way the winds are blowing. Some need to be bankers to understand the banking pieces of it. We have also representation by law, particularly by the RBI, and people who represent small and medium enterprises, people who come from agriculture. So I think building complementarity on a board has become even more important than ever before. And as I said, some of these risks you don't even understand. Where are they going to? Because see, if you look at the risk architecture, there are known risks, there are known unknown risks, and there are unknown risks. So now if you look at the COVID, it was an unknown risk. But did we learn how to deal with it? Answer is yes. And I think Yes Bank is a great example of that. So geopolitical, this whole thing. And now we have to be prepared that the economic cycles are becoming shorter. So there will be peaks and troughs. And unpredictability has become the nature of business. Now with this West Asia crisis, you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And it impacts businesses. It has impacted businesses. But we have to become more resilient. We have to kind of make sure that our businesses become more resilient, and we have to move in the right direction. So I again say, it is a very interesting time to be part of that corporate governance ecosystem, to see as to how you or each one of you or everybody else outside the room play a role in this.
Certainly. I mean, gone are the days when the boards were considered to be a burden. I think they are the biggest resource today possible. Yes, Rajan Pagloria.
Sunilji, I just wanted to know, as a leader, you've experienced these crises. So what is one of the most important lessons for you when you've seen these crises? And
So one Wharton alumni asking a question to another Wharton alumni. Yeah.
Thank you. And when I attended the advanced management program in Wharton, they didn't teach me about this. So I think this is the module that they need to bring in at Wharton. But in all seriousness, I think the key learnings and the key issues that we have to deal in a crisis situation is that if personally, as you are a leader of that institution, your integrity is completely firm, undisputed, that you have handled things in the right way, it becomes easier for you to handle the crisis. So that nobody is second guessing you. Because at the time of a crisis, you have to make some very quick decisions. Second, you have to be open and consultative. Because ultimately, whether you are the chairman of the board or you're an independent subcommittee subcommittee chair or whatever it is, I think you have to contribute, and you have to play that you are almost adding value and coming up with thoughts how to deal with this situation, how to find a solution. You have to be much more solution oriented. And third is that speed is of essence. In a crisis, time is against you, because in anything that goes wrong, as you know, under the listing guidelines, if you're a listed entity, you have to make disclosures to the stock exchanges, and there are different times of certain such disclosure has to go within 24 hours or 48 or 72 hours. You can't pontificate on that. You have to make the disclosure. The fourth piece is a level of transparency that you build inside the system. Because whatever the issues are, to whatever extent you can disclose it to the relevant people and make them part of it, I think it is much better because they all become a solution, and because they should not feel, if they are not aware of it, they become more of impediments because there is unnecessarily chatter, wrong messaging going out, people don't know what's the right thing. So you have to make them party to the solution. These are some of the things that I can say top of my mind.
Thank you so much, Sunilji. One point that I could derive from the your Yes Bank crisis management was that how you deconstructed the crisis to start with, and then each piece falls in line. So that was fantastic. We have Nityangi Kejriwal, please. Nityangi,
What three suggestions would you give to emerging business leaders specifically in terms of this volatile, uncertain world and in terms of the changing economic cycles, the geopolitical situation, so on and so forth? So what is the one thing you would tell emerging business leaders on how to operate in such a difficult situation?
She's an emerging business leader. What's your name?
My name is Nityangi, sir, from
Nityangi.
Electro Steel.
Nityangi, first thing I can say that if I can be back at the age of 25 or 30 and start my life again and be part of this, I would give everything, an arm and a leg to be there. Because please have a seat. As India emerges from where it stands today, I mean, I can't be more excited about the future of this country. There's so much. There are challenges. There are no doubt there are challenges. But, in one of my, I'll share with him one of the interviews that I had in which I said that a stage comes in one's life that you cannot throw stones because there's no one to catch them at the other end. You have to find solutions yourself, and the ecosystem that you create, you have to find. And emerging businesses. India is the future. We may have temporary blips, we may have some constraints, we may have challenges. Young, new businesses that are emerging are absolutely, I mean, the more you hear, it's not what you get in the newspapers, it's not what are already hyped about, but you talk to people on the ground. And I say that even here, I've sort of been in Calcutta now only for only about 28 hours. But I met a lot of people during this. Even in family businesses, the youngsters who are coming in and stepping into the family businesses are all coming up with new ideas. They're not sort of following the traditional, what was being done by their parents or by their grandparents. So there is so much of potential for youngsters to kind of emerge and do whatever is required to be done. It's so exciting. And what is interesting is, it's not that all of them are sort of preparing rockets to the moon or sort of drones or whatever it is. I was just speaking to a young lady the last evening. They are finding Ayurvedic solutions for herbal medicines, for our good, they are using the Indian, the whole art ecosystem that was there over many years. So these youngsters are now adapting to that and sort of building something new for this Indian market. I mean, you tell me there's so much of opportunity, but from whatever we have discussed, absorb some of those things so that you avoid any landmines as you can, as you move forward. And as I said, if you do business in the right way and you see that with integrity, purpose, commitment, objectivity, capital will follow you.
thank you, Nityangi, for asking that question. These kind of sessions are for the emerging business leaders.
Absolutely.
You capture a lot and you have so much time available to put some of these thoughts in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uncle. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure always to be a part of such conversations.
Thank you. In the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, we have last two questions. I'm sorry, there have been more coming in, but I have just last two questions. And the second last question is from Mr. Vikram Tatia, chairman of our global subcommittee, the Global Trade Subcommittee.
similar to what Nityangi just asked, but you've had a career of nearly 5 decades. अगर आपको वापस वो 5 decades दे दिया जाए, so what would you do? Just one or two things very differently.
मैं नित्यांगी के पास जाऊंगा पूछने के लिए कि मैं उनके साथ पार्टनर कर सकता हूँ. So मैं आपको बताऊं, I'll be honest. I got a youngster who came to see me just the day before I was leaving for Kolkata on Wednesday. He's running some private equity and he's got so many investee companies who are all in businesses that I had never heard of earlier. And this is venture capital funding. I promise you I had never heard of this business. And I think this is what excited me, that there's so much that, and I'm just saying, capital is abundant, capital is available as long as the capital is utilized in the right way and for right ideas, and there's an opportunity, and we know that that person or that youngsters who are, or promoters, whether it's young or it doesn't matter, that age doesn't matter, whether they are taking the right steps to kind of use that capital more efficiently, and there's a purpose in this. This is what the market is for the future. There's so much of excitement.
Thank you. I make one exception, one extra question. Vedant, you'll be the last one to ask. Gentleman in the back. Be very enthusiastically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very simple question, and maybe it is a stupid question. I think you should answer about the address about the AI factor. We are talking about big businesses, whether it's going to at all increase the economy. We are fearing that. We are thinking of the job market is going to be very, very harsh and all that. And the second is about the cyber security, which is really playing a very dangerous game in the present market situation.
So as far as AI is concerned and the whole technological evolution that is there, while we've seen the markets correcting, particularly over the last a few weeks, you can see that the markets are correcting. That to me doesn't sort of give an indication that AI is not going to play a major role going forward. I think the important thing is how can you use AI constructively, and what are the regulatory parameters that you will have around using of artificial intelligence. We are lagging behind on the regulatory framework, because at the end of the day, all regulatory institutions or regulatory frameworks that are formed is to make business more efficient and not to increase the risks or to have bad usage of AI. It can have some this thing. So I'm quite positive that it will be used effectively. Will there be some reallocation of resources? It's quite possible. There will be some reallocation. Will it lead to a lot of job losses? While you've seen some of this happening in the United States, I don't see that there's empirical evidence of that happening in India, unless somebody can correct me on my misstatement. We are still some far away, which gives us some time. Learnings from different markets, how do we readjust and do whatever is correct, which benefits our country, rather than purely adopting the models that have been adopted in some of those countries where AI is much more prevalent, or use of that.
Thank you, Sunil. And the last question from another emerging leader, Vedant.
Hello, sir. So it's something related to AI as well. So AI and data analytics are transforming the decision making. So yet trust, ethics, judgment, so they remain human attributes. So how do you see technology strengthening and not weakening the culture of an institution?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, that ultimately I do not believe that, again, whether it is through regulation or through human preservation, that we should allow AI to take over human judgment. I think that will be the biggest negative if we sort of take away what human beings have is the power of judgment. Because then if you lose that power of judgment, if AI takes over and sort of starts moving in a negative route, you've lost the ability to control it. So this is all depends on us and the power of the judgment that we have. And do not get carried away by what the market is sort of looking at it from a valuation, because that is a small percentage of the world which are looking for personal benefits. And the faster nations agree on creating a regulatory framework. I have written, and again I'll share it with Shri, and he can circulate this. I have done op-eds that India must take the lead in setting up an international institute for regulatory development. That regulatory development is not just in existing fields, but also more importantly in the new fields like artificial intelligence, cryptos. We don't have a regulation for cryptos, in data privacy, in managing your data. And environment is going through such a change. Just because if one leader of a country decides that he doesn't want to be part of the Paris Protocol, what other contours of regulations that have that you penalize that? We're getting penalized for things like human labor, this, and all of that. But there is no equivalent penalty for what that leader is doing in terms of environment. Or, and I'm not mentioning any names, but I'm just sort of saying that. Yeah. But I'm just saying this setting up a regulatory architecture is so critical. Our regulations must be more contemporary, must be aligned to the sophistication that is taking place in the markets. If we lag the markets, we will be always doing a catch-up. So,
So the X factor here is the human factor.
ultimately, it is the human factor. That is what it is. The regulatory architecture, if you don't give up that job, I mean, if you give up that job of sort of not creating the regulatory architecture and being enough supervision or limitations in terms of detriments that are there, you will lose the game.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. As we come to the conclusion of today's much interesting and enriching conversation with Shri Sunil Mehta on the theme Building Institutions and Managing Crisis, we would like to take this opportunity to present a few mementos as our token of appreciation for his gracious presence. Sir, could you please do the honors?
Very lovely. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So next time, Naresh, or any of you, and you in particular, I'm inviting you to Bombay. So that I can sort of give you my CV to be a partner with you. So this is lovely.
Thank you, sir. May I now request our Senior Vice President, Shri Ramesh Agarwal, to formally conclude today's conversation by proposing a vote of thanks.
Shri Mehta, members of the chamber, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really honored and privileged to be sitting next to you. You spoke so well with your vast knowledge and experience. You educated all of us. Thank you so much. And sir, drawing upon your vast experience across India's financial sector, you have reminded us of institutions are built not merely on capital but on credibility, sound governance and visionary leadership. Your observations have provided valuable insights to our members as they navigate an increasingly dynamic and interconnected economic landscape, now more than ever. As India continues its journey towards becoming a leading global economy, strong financial institutions, responsible leadership and a culture of trust will remain the cornerstone of our sustainable growth. Today's interaction has reinforced the importance of these enduring values. With these words, I request all of you to join me in carrying a healthy vote of thanks
to our distinguished guest speaker, Shri Sunil Ji Mehta, with appreciative acclamation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I am ever so grateful to Nilesh ji for, actually, I won't say that I'm grateful to Nilesh. First, I have to say that I reached out to him. I sent him a message and he responded to that message and we got in touch with each other after a number of years, I think. You know? So, and then I said, next time you're in Bombay, why don't you come and have a cup of coffee? And then we sat and then he sort of said, I will let you know a date and sometime in July or something we agreed to meet. So, but I am so grateful that Naresh ji brought up this idea and as the president of this institution, I'm so proud of the work that he and his past presidents have done, and I'm sure the same will be carried by the future presidents. I also understand that this is the first time that you have a president who comes from the capital markets. I think this is the first time, is it? And mostly it's been manufacturing and people who've been in trading and other ends. So for capital markets to be part of this echelon of wonderful people who are sort of handing over the baton one to the other, it's a great addition. And maybe as it moves along, as this chamber evolves, it will have people from technology, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, all the, and of course the legal system, regulators. Yeah, you had that, yeah. So it's a such a wonderful platform, and you know, this is a transition from family business to the next generation. So there are generational changes that are also quite evident. Even in your case, you have your two young sons. आपका कहाँ है मैं बेटा मेरे को हाँ एक तो यहाँ है दूसरा कहाँ पे है वो ऑफिस में अच्छा he's holding the phone. He's making money while he's sort of spending time here. Very good. But इतना अच्छा लगता है when Nareshi introduced his son to me several years ago, and I think he had just started taking the responsibility, and now he's an integral part of it. So I think to me this endured that whole thing about the Indian culture and ethos of maintaining the values in a traditional family business. It is an asset that we have, and we've got to make full use of it.